Earlier this year, I looked at the much maligned and disappointing Sacred 3. Overall, I was very unsatisfied with the game from the overly simplistic and repetitive combat, bad story, and the overly linear gameplay. Looking back, I wish I added some context before reviewing Sacred 3 to really understand how far Sacred has fallen. To remedy this, we will be taking a look at the original Sacred from 2004. Developed by the now defunct Escarin Entertainment, this action RPG looked to expand upon the standards set by Diablo and Diablo 2 before it, by adding a handcrafted open world. It also broke tradition, adding many unique characters outside of your typical warrior, thief, and mage build. Sacred was ultimately successful enough to establish 3 additional follow-ups, but with that said, is Sacred still worth playing today? So when you start the game, you can pick from one of 8 characters. The 8 characters featured here are Gladiator, Seraphim, Demon, Dwarf, Battle Mage, Dark Elf, Wood Elf, and Vampirus. For an action RPG, we had got a very unique set of characters to choose from with quite a bit of freedom to play with. You are also given 2 difficulty levels to choose from with Bronze and Silver. While I usually go for the iconic Seraphim for playthroughs, I'll go with the Vampirus on the Bronze level difficulty. And once you begin, you're given a few cutscenes and a tutorial you can participate in. The tutorial is a bunch of text boxes that appear telling you about the various mechanics. Unfortunately, not everything here is explained, and there are some mechanics that you'll need to discover on your own. Mainly, you'll have to learn about some of the quirks of leveling up, which we will get into later in this review. So the main questline boils down to this. There is an orc invasion on the horizon with you as the main messenger. As you deliver the messages, you'll realize that there is a bigger conflict at play and try to prepare yourself and the others to deal with the main threat. The characters you pick will offer voice lines and their own perspective in the matter from the journal. As most Diablo likes tend to have a pretty lackluster story, Sacred unfortunately is no exception. However, there is quite a bit of lore and world building here that makes the world of Sacred very interesting. Throughout the game, you can find books and scrolls detailing past events and wars that happened in Encaria and how that has affected the world around you. Unfortunately, most of this world building is more tell rather than show. Still, I do appreciate the effort here, as the world of Encaria is quite charming. And speaking of the world, I should mention that this game is completely open world. This is a huge contrast to other action RPGs of the time that would be mission based or dungeon based. The Diablo series itself wouldn't implement an open world until Diablo 4 was released in 2023, meaning Sacred was 19 years ahead of the game. Open world games nowadays tend to get picked apart on their execution, but Sacred does a great job with diversifying every location, from forests to deserts to volcanoes and even ice mountains. There's quite a bit of diversity in the biomes. This is also taken further with certain locations on the overworld featuring unique enemies to deal with. It's honestly quite fun taking a character and going to unexplored locations just to see what enemies and challenges you can find. Along with the various creatures and biomes to seek out in the open world, there are a crap ton of side quests to complete. Some are pretty simple, while others are surprisingly involved with several twists and turns within them. Heck, some of these side quests even feature branching paths depending on the actions that you take. Completing side quests can even net you additional side quests to complete, making it feel like you're making a difference within the world. While it isn't necessary to complete these, I would recommend trying a handful, as you can get ability runes to help unlock and level up abilities for your character. If I had one complaint about the open world, it's the overall size of it. For a game of this type and being from 2004, it is insanely large, making traveling through it feel a bit monotonous. Even though you can get a mount and move pretty fast, there is a level of tedium when trying to get to the next location. Thankfully, there are fast travel portals that you can use, but these are only in certain places and cannot be used at will. This was something that was addressed in Sacred 2, but that is a review for another day. So all the open world stuff is nice and good, but what about the combat itself? This ultimately depends on your character and the type of build you are ultimately going for. While most characters can generally use the same weapons, there are some unique weapons for each character, such as the various guns and cannons you can find as the dwarf, or even some unique bows for the wood elf. As a Vampirus, I specialized in one-handed axe and shield combo, which proved to be very effective. Since I was basically a melee fighter, this involved a lot of left clicking to attack my enemies. Along with the standard attacks, you are given a variety of abilities to help spice things up. For the Vampirus, I take on the role of a female knight for the majority of the day, blending in among the living. In this human form, I can use and learn several active abilities, such as summoning a loyal wolf companion or channeling a stronger strike into my melee attacks. These abilities offer a good mix of utility and power, making combat feel dynamic. However, my true strength lies in the ability to transform into a vampiro when night falls, or really just whenever I choose, hit right click. In this state, my physical attacks become significantly more powerful, and I gain access to a unique set of vampiric abilities. This includes summoning a bat to harass and distract my enemies, and using blood kiss to drink the life force directly from their veins. Each ability feels distinct and flavorful, adding depth to the character and encouraging experimentation. If you really want to push your potential, you can seek out a combo master which helps you change these abilities into devastating combos. Mastering these combinations elevates combat to a new level, making every battle feel fast-paced, strategic, and incredibly satisfying. And to add even more variety into the mix, you can find mounts and even attack while using them. I then discovered that being a bold cavalryman is actually a legitimate tactic, which I will use if I ever decide to have a wood elf playthrough. All of this here is to say that there is a good amount of variety in terms of how to take out your enemies. Even though this is the case, it still will eventually get repetitive as you'll most likely sink into a dominant strategy. Still, the combat is more than serviceable here and works very well. As expected for any RPG, you will level up with enough experience points gained. Gaining experience points will grant an attribute point as well as several skill points. Attributes include strength, endurance, dexterity, physical regeneration, magical regeneration, and charisma. The skills you can unlock will ultimately depend on the character. You'll often start with the weapon skill and can add additional skills after reaching certain levels. These skills get more specific, such as the axe skill and the armor skill. Certain skill levels are needed to equip certain items. It can be a bit daunting at first what you should choose for your character, especially that you are not able to respec your character. However, I wouldn't worry too much about it as long as you have a solid idea of how you want to build your character. If not, there are more than plenty of guides on YouTube and the like. Outside of leveling up, the equipment you use is very vital to your success. As expected for any Diablo-like, there is a ton of loot to find and gain from various chests and fallen foes. In the early game, gold and loot are scarce, although they definitely start to appear more often the longer you play. Depending on who you play as will determine the armor and weapons that you are able to equip. Sometimes you may find a rare piece of armor only to find out that it is not designed for your character. Certain equipment can also be upgraded at a blacksmith, adding more longevity to the equipment that you find. Overall, the loot system is better than most, although I do wish there was a bit more variety in the looks of the armor. As mentioned, I am playing on the bronze difficulty level, which is the easiest one in the game. While Sacred definitely gets easier as you level up and understand the mechanics more, there is still a challenge, especially if you decide to forego the main story and explore the overworld. I often took my underlevel vampirist through the desert and other locations to both level her up faster and get better loot. There's also some pretty powerful enemies to encounter, including dragons who have a strong potential to one-shot you early on. If you're finding the game a bit too easy on bronze, you can export your character and begin on a higher difficulty level. According to HowLongToBeat.com, the main story can take about 25 hours. This is about on par for other action RPGs of the time and slightly longer than some of the more modern ones. For my playthrough, I clocked in about 19 hours. This included quite a bit of the side quests, but there were definitely a ton that I did not get to. It's a solid length, although the latter parts can feel a bit tedious if you end up overpowered. With my vampirist, combat became a breeze by the end game, with the only challenge being making sure that I am drinking health potions. Even after beating game and unlocking a new difficulty level, that's not all. With the Underworld expansion pack, there is a whole new campaign to play with. While you can technically create a new character, it is recommended to export your character from the main campaign and continue playing here. The game picks up at the end of the main campaign as you deal with the fallout from the main game's conclusion. Outside of some of the new areas and enemies, it is mostly the same game with a bit less polish this time around. The Underworld campaign is also much shorter, estimated to take only about 5 hours. I must really suck then, because for some reason it took me about 10 hours to complete. Honestly, I only completed this campaign to put a nice bow on the game. The Underworld campaign pales in comparison to the main one, with much less to explore, an uneven difficulty curve, and a story that feels more like an epilogue than a fully fleshed out narrative. While it was nice to revisit familiar mechanics and settings, The lack of new gameplay innovations and the shorter, more linear structure made it feel like a bit of a slog by the end. That said, if you've already invested into the characters and the world, it still offers a sense of closure. Just don't expect the same level of excitement or depth as the main campaign. I've mainly focused on the solid solo experience here, but multiplayer is also featured. I was able to quickly test LAN between my main machine and the XP machine. I'm happy to report that it worked flawlessly and is added on my list of LAN games to try out with a buddy. Before we wrap it up, just a few comments I would like to make on the presentation. Audio wise, the music is fine, but doesn't play very often. The voice work, however, is very top notch. I really like the voice of the vampirist the best. Graphically, I love the way this game looks. The 2D backgrounds with the 3D models somehow works very well here. Even though I like the art style here, your character can get obstructed by the scenery, making it very hard to make out what's going on. It also doesn't help that the frame rate will sometimes dip randomly when a lot of monsters are on screen. Overall, Sacred 1 is still a very enjoyable time despite being over 20 years old. The characters to pick from are diverse and interesting, leveling up and gaining skills is rewarding, and the novelty of a fully open world in this genre still holds up well today. Action RPGs similar to Diablo tend to suffer from many pitfalls, but Sacred succeeds in avoiding many of these. The only issues I have is the grind on later levels, and how I wish there was a stronger narrative for the main story. Still, I did have many memorable moments and battles that still make Sacred one hell of a good time. Will the sequel Sacred 2 pass the test as well? That, my friends, is a story for another time. Thank you for watching as always. And this is Powerhouse, signing off.